Today on Premier League 11s, we're going to be building the best possible Premier League historical 11 out of only left-footed players. The rules are very simple. The player's footedness must be listed as left-footed on Football Reference, and they must have had one appearance in the Premier League in history. Their Premier League career will be the most important factor, but I will take into account their career outside of the Premier League in close situations. With that, here is your teaser team without any names listed. Today is a very tough one, I feel like. It's not necessarily information you've got at the front of your mind as to whether or not someone is left-footed, and I was definitely surprised, outside of some of the obvious choices, as to who I ended up having to put in this team. In goals, I could have had Petr Cech again, but today instead I have chosen to go with Ederson as my goalkeeper. I thought it was a bit more in spirit with the team, seeing as he is such a distribution-focused goalkeeper, and the fact he's left-footed as well really sort of makes him fit in well. The keeper has been a part of Pep Guardiola's dominant Man City team since moving from Benfica to Man City, and he has made 250 Premier League appearances now. He really is a stalwart of that Man City team, with 112 clean sheets in that time. As I said, Petr Cech was the other keeper who I considered, but I thought thematically Ederson fitted in nicely here. He can ping out long balls with his left feet. Next up, we have left back Ashley Cole. Now, as you can imagine, left back was one of the easier positions to fill on the team, and because of that fact I was able to simply pick up, in my opinion, the best left back in history in the Premier League, in Ashley Cole. There was obviously a lot of competition, a lot of left-sided players for this position, but you really can't go wrong with the man who shut down the left flank for Arsenal and Chelsea for a number of years, winning multiple Premier Leagues, FA Cups, and of course a Champions League at the end of his career with Chelsea. While putting aside some of his off-the-field controversies, I think really you can't argue with this choice. You could have slotted in any left-back from the Premier League era here really. They're taking aside a couple of niche right-footed left-backs such as Dennis Irwin or Cesar Azpilicueta. So a strong start to the team, but centre-back was where things started getting a little bit tough. And honestly, I was surprised outside of left-backs, strikers and wingers how few left-footed players there were in the Premier League era who I'd consider top-notch Premier League players. There are a few more recent players who may carve out great careers, but historically, not a lot of left-footers outside of left-back, left-wing, strikers. I guess maybe it makes sense because there's so few. If you're left-footed, you sort of get shoved into left-back or left-wing. But it was surprising to see a relative dearth of left-footed centre-backs and centre midfielders. So, for my first centre-back, in saying that I have gone for 5 at the back, I have chosen Jan Vertonghen. The Spurs defender made 232 appearances in the Premier League, keeping 72 clean sheets, and he was a really strong presence at the back for that Tottenham team, who sort of became top 4 contenders in his time at the club. He was perhaps slightly limited by injuries, but a very skillful and talented centre-back, and for me he was the only surefire choice out of this back 3. A real act of class, tall, strong, good with his feet, and, of course, most importantly, left-footed. He'll slot in beside Ashley Cole as my left centre-back. And then next up, we have a player who I feel perhaps is slightly underrated in the Man City setup. It's Nathan Ake. Starting at Chelsea, of course, the Dutchman wasn't quite able to carve out a role for himself in that squad at a young age, being repeatedly loaned out to the likes of Reading, Watford and Bournemouth before finally making a permanent transfer to Bournemouth, where then he spent a couple of years before being picked up by Man City and sort of operating as the ultimate squad player. He kind of reminds me, and this is a weird comparison, but a little bit of John O'Shea in terms of how he fills in multiple positions in the squad. You'd never say Nathan Ake was Man City's most pivotal player, but he's a very reliable fill-in. I do think Chelsea made quite a big mistake in letting him go so easily, although, as is always the case with Chelsea, they have bags and bags of talent and often don't quite utilise it as well as they should. Nathan Ake is another one of those more recent left-footed players who does not play at left-back or left-wing, but I feel like he has done enough in his career to warrant a spot in this team, especially as centre-back is a bit of a weak position in the 11. And finally, at the centre of defence, as my final choice is another modern-day Premier League player in Gabriel. The Arsenal defender has only made 131 appearances in the Premier League, but he has been pivotal in securing their back line and making them the most defensively solid version of Arsenal we have seen in the Premier League in a long time. Gone are the days of the leaky Arsene Wenger defences trying to score as many as they concede, and instead grinding out 1 or 2-0 victories has been a hallmark of this recent team. And Gabriel, alongside other players like Declan Rice, is a big part of that. While, again, in a similar vein to Ake, although with considerably less appearances, he may be in the infancy of his Premier League career, I think he has done just enough to beat out other central defender candidates. The closest, in my opinion, to edging him out would have been Thomas Vermaelen. Mikel Silvestre also had a shout, and Gvardiol is a player who in the future might be able to do it. But I think Gabriel, out of those choices, is the right mix between experience in the Premier League and sort of talent, the higher level talent than Mikel Silvestre or Thomas Vermaelen. Although Vermaelen was very talented, but simply had to contend with a lot of injuries, and again was part of a leakier backline than Gabriel has been for Arsenal. So that's the final of my back three. And the reason I've gone for a back three is to compensate for my slightly controversial right back choice. I could have just simply chosen a left back and slotted them into a back four with one playing on the wrong side, but with such a high level of talents on the left wing, you really are missing out on this team by only being able to have one. So I wanted to try and shoehorn another in, and in order to cover for the defensive deficiencies, perhaps, I thought playing 5 at the back would let my right wing back Gareth Bale have a lot of attacking freedom to sort of cut inside, go where he wants, and then have 4 at the back to cover for him if he gets stuck up the pitch, cutting inside on the left foot. Gareth Bale, of course, started his Premier League career at Southampton before moving to Tottenham for big money. Honestly, I thought he made more Premier League appearances with 166, but he was snapped up by Real Madrid, of course, and went on to play a major part in them winning multiple Champions Leagues in his time there, while also getting in lots of time on the golf course, really living the best of both lives there. He had 53 goals and 22 assists in his time in the Premier League, and he did play at left wing back occasionally in his Premier League career, so I don't think this right wing back choice is too controversial. Of course, he will be inverted, but I trust a player of his skill can find a way to make that work. And of course, as I said earlier, I could have just stuck in a different left back here, but I was trying to get a little bit unique with my choices and fit in as many of the good players, the exciting attacking players as I could, while keeping them reasonably defensively solid. So that completes my back 5 of Ashley Cole, Jan Vertonghen, Nathan Ake, Gabriel, and then Gareth Bale on the right. Next up we have our 2 holding defensive midfielders, and my first choice is Chelsea and Man United defensive midfielder Nemanja Matic. Matic had 251 appearances and a bit of a strange career in the Premier League, starting slow with multiple loans from Chelsea, going to places such as Vitesse Arnhem, the usual Chelsea stronghold for loans, never really establishing himself in the team, before then coming back later and making a great impact as they won the Premier League, with him in the heart of midfield alongside Cesc Fabregas. He then made a £40 million move to Manchester United, where he never quite had the same level of impact, but was a solid squad player in the turbulent period which is still ongoing post Sir Alex Ferguson. He's made 251 appearances and has contributed 6 goals and 23 assists in the Premier League. There were other options for midfield in a more attacking vein, such as Juan Mata, David Silva and Bernardo Silva, but I feel like really with the balance of the team, another attacking midfielder with this setup wouldn't really work. You had to choose sort of a holding midfielder, and there aren't too many choices for those. And Nemanja Matic was, in my opinion, the best option out of the bunch. And then alongside him is the late great Gary Speed. The Welshman made a massive 535 appearances in the Premier League across clubs such as Leeds, Everton, Newcastle and Bolton. He had a real penchant for arriving late and scoring pivotal goals, with 80 goals and 44 assists from the centre of midfield, a true box-to-box midfielder, and beloved everywhere he went, of course, leading on to his career in management with Wales. Again, other attacking options were available, but Gary Speed offered a bit more balance than the more attacking lightweight midfielders in my team, and a true Premier League legend who deserves a spot in this team. Then we go on to our left winger, and again it's another very stacked position, but when you're talking about left wingers, in the Premier League era, and Ryan Giggs is a choice. You can't really choose anyone else. Say what you will about his personal life, but his Premier League career was pretty much unparalleled to the modern day, with 632 appearances and 109 goals and 162 assists on the left wing. It also rounds out a very strong Welsh contingent in this team, with Gareth Bale, Gary Speed and Ryan Giggs all making appearances. There's not a lot more that needs to be said about Ryan Giggs. There are lots of other good options, Phil Foden, Ozil, etc. Basically any left winger from the Premier League era, similar to left back, but the consensus best left winger in the Premier League was left-footed, and so I will put him here. On the right wing, again, it's a pretty easy choice, and I've gone with Chelsea and Liverpool player Mo Salah, with 157 goals and 262 appearances. The goal-scoring prowess of the Egyptian winger can't really be disputed, and he's a natural fit on the right side where he plays in real life, cutting in on the left foot and scoring goals. Of course, a player with less Premier League appearances with a similar play style in Arjen Robben was an option, but his Premier League impact was much less, in my opinion, although he was very good for a period of years for Chelsea. Mane, Mahrez, also left-footed wingers who could have filled the spot, but I don't think you can really argue with putting Mo Salah there. And now a controversial choice up front. Ultimately, it came down to a choice of two for me, and I have decided to go for a bit of an older school choice in Robbie Fowler as my striker for this team. He made 379 appearances across 4 Premier League teams, but he was most known for his time in Liverpool, and he scored 163 goals, averaging 0.43 goals a game across his Premier League career. He had a bit of a weird end to his career, petering off with spells in Cardiff, Blackburn, and then going abroad with North Queensland Fury, and over to China. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that one. But really the other strong option up front was Robin van Persie, and for me it came down to a question of play style, and I just wanted a pure goal scorer up front. I wanted someone a bit more old school. I thought it'd be nice. But obviously I couldn't complain if you chose Robin van Persie here. He was a silky left-footed skillful player who'd be able to drop in a bit deeper and facilitate Salah. I just thought with Ryan Giggs swinging crosses in, I feel like Robbie Fowler is a bit more of a natural player getting on the end of that style of football. And then of course you can have Mo Salah cutting in from the right still. Haaland is another player who in the future may be able to be considered to fill this role. He's probably well on course. It's more a question of how long he stays in the Premier League and just longevity. And at this stage, I can't really make a call on that. Although for pure talent level, he probably outstrips the other two in terms of raw prototype striker builds, you know. But Van Persie and Robbie Fowler were two very strong choices to choose between. Although I might have some angry Arsenal and Man United fans in my comments section with this choice. So that's the completed team then. It is a very strong lineup, but there were some areas where it was a little bit lacking in comparison to some of my other teams so far. The choices of players like Jan Vertonghen, Ake and Gabriel, while good Premier League players, aren't quite at that top echelon of players that I've had so far in other teams, and the same could go for players like Nemanja Matic. Obviously Gareth Bale is a bit out of position on the right, but we obviously have a very strong left side with Ashley Cole overlapping Ryan Giggs on the left. For my manager, I've chosen Liam Brady. He's got a great left foot. He moaned loads about players on RTE, so he should know something about teaching them to get it right. And then he hung around Arsene Wenger a load, so hopefully he picked up some tips in his time. It's actually quite hard to find left-footed players who became managers. I couldn't find too many I could think of outside of the obvious in Gary Speed, so I decided to go trust in Liam Brady. And in my ranking table, I'm going to put lefty legends in at the bottom of the table. I think they're just that little bit less quality in key areas than in the two other teams I've ranked so far. But we'll see how the table develops as we go on. If you have any idea for future teams, please do leave it in the comments, as, well, I'm not running out yet. I will be soon. So I have a few more ideas, but if you have any ideas for future teams, please do let me know. And just a quick recap. Our team weakness, the centre-backs and Bale a right wing-back. Team strengths are attacking speed, skill, and silky left feet. And we had 13 unique Premier League teams represented. Thank you very much for watching. Again, we're in an early stage, so if you're watching, you're one of my first viewers. Really appreciate you being here. And, we're looking to improve every time. Things are getting a bit sleeker as we go. I'm looking to keep improving on that as we build. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with another team soon enough.